Thank you, Neo Geo, for always having the how to play section. I actually think it was a pretty nice idea to include these in arcade games because there's no manual or anything. Of course, you will die many times even with the help, but it's a nice thought. Also kind of a tradition. Also, thank you for showing me how to do that special move. I'm going to use it so many times. Like a ridiculous number of times. Well, you know how the warrior kinda towers over the other two when they show up? It's pretty much the same way in-game. I'll explain a bit more as we go through it. In short, warrior is kind of easy mode. So the arena to the right is kind of a nice idea, but I suspect they ran out of time while developing it because there's no way to complete it. When you get to Naz's, there's no way to beat him before time runs out. Anyway, I actually discovered the gold pails after killing those enemies quickly out of frustration. For some reason, my spell button just didn't seem to work, so I went back to the beginning to just spam it and test it out. And after extreme overkill of the first two waves, these guys showed up, and I had no idea that was a thing. But it's pretty helpful. And here we go with the villain entrance. If he jumped forward and fought me right now, of course I would definitely not be able to beat him. But instead he's putting his trust in Hyper Rat. I have no idea why Nazis has such confidence in Hyper Rat. I'm only doing the 4-hit combo to be fancy. I could just put him in the 3-hit loop as much as I want, really. So, why this game? Why not any other game at all? Before I explain that, now, if I used that extra money to get the level 4 axe, it would completely trivialize the first half of the game, I'd say. Because not only is it a huge boost to attack for the early game, but its magic is ridiculously strong. It doesn't deal damage, but instead it puts a barrier over you. It auto-blocks anything. You cannot die, and it lasts for a really long time, and magic is not hard to come by in this game. So yeah. Complete game breaker until you have to get the next weapon, at which point the spending might catch up with you, maybe. Well, why this game? The reason is that I was inspired by a playthrough of Cross Swords 1. I thought it was completely impossible to finish that game on 1 credit, like it wasn't designed to be beaten by humans, but Ars Magna proved me wrong. He played, well, one thing. When they say, let's give Rat one more chance, they mean it, because rats never show up in the game after this fight. Anyway, Ars Magna played by the rules that worked instead of the rules that the game tried to enforce. Like, the tutorial says that blocking and countering is the main way to win at the game, but that's just completely wrong. You'll die if you try it in the later game. And that applies to both Cross Swords 1 and 2. Anyway, so upon discovering the sequel to Cross Swords 1, I also found out that there were no one-credit completion videos of it that I could find. At least, not available to Google search or YouTube search. So I decided to make this. It took me some practice, to be sure, but I'm pretty happy with the result. So, how would I compare the two games? I'd say that Cross Swords 1 is simpler in its concept and execution, but they saw it through to the end. Like, it's a complete game. None of it feels rushed or pushed out at the last second. Whereas Cross Swords 2 is the other way around. It has some great ideas. It has lots of new things they add to the engine. However, there's some evidence that it was pushed out too early. The arena is one big clue. Also, some of the enemy design and quirks sort of clue me in that this game did not get enough testing time. One part of that is the character balance. It is... okay, the reason that the warrior is so much better than the other two characters has two parts. First of all, the normal attacks are much better for the warrior. You can kill enemies with it. To give you a comparison, the Lady Mage character does not kill a Devil Eye with a normal 4-hit combo. She has to use AAB. You're gonna see me kill them in 2 normal hits as the warrior. It's a huge difference, and the ninja is not that much better. This is, this boss fight right here. I like it because there are a few ways that you can approach it. If you're willing, you can just stand right under it while it's in the back row and block whatever it throws at you, so you get a pretty decent hit after it reaches the front. I prefer not to do that just because of the chip damage if you block its jump and slash. And, well, I think that getting a full health recovery when you buy a level up is too strong. It allows you to skip a fair amount of the resource management in this game. So when it says the Blue Knight of Darius, it's not talking about the Blue Garters, just to let you know. Those guys have a ridiculously long stun animation if you hit them with a power attack. Not only do they have trouble getting up, they have this Capcom-style dizzy animation that just holds them in place. You can do whatever you want. I'm sorry, I'm sort of sidetracking myself a lot. I've already talked about how normal attacks are amazing for the warrior and it makes a big difference in gameplay. It makes the A-B loop just incredibly good. And because of this, he can kill enemies quickly to unlock more bonus enemies, which, as we've seen, give a lot of neat stuff. The other reason is that his power attack is much better than the other two characters. First of all, its horizontal range is very nice. It allows you to take on a lot of situations where otherwise you'd have to play the high-low block game, which is very risky and just kind of a pain. Also, it stuns the enemy and allows a follow-up. And since his normal attacks are great, well, there you go. By comparison, the ninja's attack also has some okay horizontal reach. It hits 3 times and it knocks the enemy to the back row. So, a follow-up is not as feasible, although it does allow you to play the repeated hit-back game if you like that. But the main problem is the 3-hit part. Any enemy that can block any kind of attack, and there's a few, will get hit by the first part of the power attack and then block the other two, which makes it pretty much useless. Still, I mean, it's not the worst power attack, it's just that the Warriors is so much better because it has a follow-up and deals 1 hit. The Mage's power attack has no horizontal range at all. It deals 1 hit and it knocks the enemy to the back row. Now, you're going to see me use the horizontal reach of the Warrior's attack a lot. You've seen it a lot already. You can probably tell what a big difference it makes. So by I'm sorry, I say by comparison a lot. So what does the game say? Well, these two characters aren't so bad, they have some stuff. Well, first of all, the Warrior's attacks are slower than the other two. For example, the sort of hop slash that these blue mages have, it's hard to block and counter them as the Warrior, whereas the other two have a fairly easy time of it. The other thing is that the Warrior is just overall slower. He moves slower, he recovers from hits slower, which is a bit of a problem later. However, there's a couple of hidden problems for the other two that I have no idea. This is the devil that I was talking about, by the way. That I have no idea why it was designed that way. Or rather, I have a guess, but it doesn't even make sense. So the Warrior starts with more gold than the other two characters, and all of his gear costs less. The only reason I can think of is that because the other two are faster, they can collect the gold dropped by enemies and bosses more easily. But the difference in starting gold and prices doesn't even begin to make up for it, especially because the early game is where that difference affects the game the most. It just baffles me why they did that. According to Wikipedia, Keru just means frog in Japanese. They could have just called them Frog Warriors and nothing would have been lost. So why they use the Japanese name? No, you don't understand. Keru has a much deeper meaning than the English version. They have to keep the Japanese word, otherwise it just wouldn't be the same. Actually, I guess they just didn't bother to translate. I don't know. I suspect Gold Gamma also means something fairly simple in English. Whatever. I'm amazed that attack missed me, by the way. I definitely should have been hit. Oh well. Oh, another reason I play this game is that I love the music. Especially the boss music, but there are a few other tracks that I enjoy as well. Here we have the Scarlet Mage, the only mage that uses magic as an attack instead of just a fancy entrance. Oh boy, the big thing about that energy drain grab attack is that you have to mash out of it. If you do that, you can reduce the damage by a lot. It's also very weak against the Spirit Shot. So one of the reasons I think this game was rushed is the AAB loop. Like, I'm fairly sure you're not supposed to be able to infinitely chain most enemies. I think that what the problem is the block stun caused by the B as the third part of a combo keeps the enemy blocking low for long enough that you can hit them high when you're done executing the hit. And now I have the best weapon in the game. Why isn't the level 8 sword the best weapon in the game? Because if you take it, you lose against the final boss hands down. Hey, you killed the typical RPG quest reward giver. What's wrong with you? That's what will get people upset. It's not that, this poor druid lady was finally happy and then she was senselessly murdered. No. Like, I was gonna get a reward and you just killed it. Yeah, that's why I think the designers understand, gamers. So, gold gammers. They are designed to cause unblockable situations. That is, one attacking with fireballs from the back and another attacking low in the front. The reason that this is still reasonable is that you have the down plus A plus B breakout attack that blocks anything. In fact, I think that move is overpowered, and I'll demonstrate that later. Okay, Karu Warriors. This encounter and the warrior encounter afterwards, this scares me a lot, and the main reason is that these guys will abandon chivalry sometimes. Like right now. I was trying to do down A and B, but the combo just kept me locked in place. Oh well. Oh, I think what happened there is that I tried to dodge to the left under the attack, except I did it too late, so I got smacked. Wow, definitely should have got hit there too. That would have been the end of the run, wow. Gotta pay attention to your blocking and not get jittery from recording nerves. Well, I doubt you'll get that particular problem, because who records this game? Crazy people, that's who. So, programming oversights. Aside from the AAB loop, there's a few other things. I'm not quite sure that the people who made this game understood the full implications of the tools given to the characters. And one of the biggest examples of this is the down then up plus A knockback move. Now, the reason that the stamina drain breakout thing is somewhat acceptable is you're limited in the number of times you can use it. Oh, I like this boss design too. He looks like a complete idiot, but he actually has a fairly smart strategy. He'll dash back where you can't hit him and try to shell bash, and it is completely unpunishable. However, he's not that smart, because sometimes he'll get impatient and try to claw you, at which point you just wreck him. So, as I was saying, the down and up knockback attack. I could probably abuse that a lot more than I'm doing so far. Like, the thing is, and I suspect this is another oversight, when an enemy jumps forward into the foreground, you can hit him with whatever. You've already seen that plenty of times. And logically, if you combine that with an attack that knocks them into the background, you can just keep chaining that forever. And that's a command attack, it costs nothing to use. I just really think this game could have benefited from more testing. Oh, these High Knights. Now, they have a move that I wasn't able to show off here because I was too busy killing them. It's this sort of magic attack with a couple of blue discs that fly across the foreground, and if you get hit by one, you die. I'm not exaggerating. I've been killed from full health by those things. It's worse in a two-player game because if you're alone, you just have to block it high. The high one will always be aimed at you. But in two-player, one is high and one is low, and you can't tell beforehand which way they're aiming. I probably didn't need to break out there. The acid actually does not do much damage. I think fighting these ninjas is a lot of fun, which is good because the game throws a ridiculous number of ninjas at you. Oh, as I mentioned in the text video, ninjas use their normal melee attacks quite fast, and the warrior has trouble with that. Which is to say, he recovers from being hit more slowly than the other characters, so he can't block continuous ninja attacks. Once you are hit by the first one, that's it. But that's what the breakout move is for. And honestly, it's pretty smart to use that whenever you're hit by something that has a follow-up. Better not to play the high-low block game at all. Toryu is another fun enemy, which I don't really let him do stuff, because, hey, I gotta survive. But he has a stylish dash slash and a Bunshin attack, which is actually really easy to hit him before he executes it. Don't even have to worry about blocking that thing. And here's a touch that my brother, who's also a bit of a gamer, enjoys. The Japanese-themed enemies drop Japanese items. None of their food is very good, but the coins dropped by the Gold Ninja are ridiculously valuable. Anyway, speaking of Gold Ninjas, they have a pretty awful plan. The Master Ninjas, which I assume that's why they're called Master, have a pretty good plan, which is one dashing attack that hits low and one that can hit high, which is a pretty reasonable mix-up. The Gold Ninjas have these elaborate jumping attacks that always hit high and are very easy to see coming. So, I just consider them bonus enemies, really. That's provided that you don't try any of that high-low block garbage right in front of them, because there's no reason to do that. So if a Master Ninja jumps right in front of you, you can just hit it with a normal attack and then do the loop. There's no reason to do anything else. You'll kill it 100%. I'm just using the lightning stun attack to be fancy. Its practical purpose is when an enemy with super armor jumps in, because any normal enemy will have its super armor broken by that thing. Also, I got hit by a red garter. Well, rest in peace, restart time. Not really, of course. So Gold Knights are the only gold enemies that can actually give me trouble. It took me some practice to find a good way to deal with them. Their main weakness, and in fact the weakness of all knights technically, is that if you hit them with a power attack, they're stunned for a really long time. The Skeleton Worm is all offense. Its melee attacks are hard to see coming and deal 3 bars of damage each, but if you attack while it's approaching you, it will just take full combos from nothing. So it's gonna be a quick fight either way, usually. I think part of the problem with its distribution of resources is this is at least technically a two-player game, and they have to configure the boss loot and normal enemy loot with that in mind. I don't actually know if the number of enemies changes significantly between one player and two player because I am forever alone, but I suspect that the increase in loot is not that much. I guess the rationale is, oh, when you're playing alone, boss explosions give loot that you can't completely catch. With two players, that's not a problem. Except it's pretty easy to catch all the best loot as single player. This may explain why I have such a ridiculous surplus in gold towards the end of the game. Though I still think the game would be overall harder because you can't get really amazing weapons early on if the gold is distributed between two people. And here we have the last stand of the Karu warriors. I have been jump slashed from the back row while dealing a combo to one of them in the front row. I'm not sure that's even possible to avoid. By the way, the level intro says this is the ice hole of Jiria. Was that on purpose? Actually, no, I'm almost sure it was not on purpose. Which might even make it funnier. So that's where my habit of dashing away after dealing a combo really hurt me. A better response would be to just move to the side normally while blocking low. That way its high attack will miss you and you'll block its wider low attack. I also view any monster from the Pale family as a bonus enemy. Just because they cannot block at all and it's easy to stun them when they jump in. And their Flame Burst attack can be blocked high and deals no chip. They're just completely pathetic. I hope you like fighting ninjas. Well, actually, I kinda do like fighting ninjas, so this place is kinda fun. I think that just the overall design of them as an enemy is pretty good. They are also fairly likely to jump in while you're already fighting one of them, which is, you know, a pretty nice touch. They've seen the movies, they know what happens when they go in one at a time. Even though they still go in one at a time a lot. Maybe that's just because I killed them quickly, though. So, if I was gonna design the character balance, first of all, I'd increase the damage and normal attacks of the other two characters a little bit so that they match up better with the warrior. I'd also give the warrior the lowest magic stat and give the ninja middle of the road instead of the worst. That'll give the warrior more trouble with the final boss, which is kind of intentional. He might actually have to normally hit it a few times, which would be absolute hell. And the ninja is supposed to be a middle-of-the-road character in all things, so why not in magic as well? I think this is the longest boss intro in the entire game. And I love how you can just smack him with the knockback right after he does that dramatic jump in. I think that's my favorite thing to do. So the samurai has some fun tricks. He'll use an attack that hits low if you're close and high if you're a bit further away. He'll sort of dash to the side and hit you. And he has a magic attack that's really hard to deal with. And of course, I can't be bothered to actually wrestle with any of that, because why should I? I can just chain the knockback attack. So, full power, and there's plenty of chapters to go. I'm almost certain that this was unintentional, that I shouldn't have been able to do that. And that being able to get the level 7 weapon that early was not really supposed to be possible. They were just putting it in the shop as a teaser. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know why the developers do things. So this part is actually a fairly nasty gauntlet, because you have to go through this act and then the next one without a heal, and there's some ways that you can easily take damage through here. So these palette swap samurai are no big deal because they have high-low guard instead of the boss's omni guard. So you can just do AAB forever, unlike what I did right there. So now that I have max level and the only weapon I'm ever gonna buy, I have more than enough gold to get me through the rest of the game. Like, healing from full costs 2,000, and I will never need to buy magic. I think that in a two-player game, this sequence here is where you're supposed to get all the gold you need to get the best stuff in the final shop, which is how video games are supposed to work. Although I do have one problem with the whole Master Ninja thing. I would expect a Master Ninja to, first of all, appear behind me rather than in front of me, and second of all, I would not be able to tell they were a ninja by looking at them, because you were supposed to be inconspicuous. Whatever. It's a video game, Ninja, I shouldn't complain. This golem is awful, I hate it. And the reason is it'll throw out high-low unblockable attacks like it's no big deal. That's what keeps me from trying to block and counter it like the game tells me I'm supposed to do. It's actually kind of fun because the golem's attacks are a bit slow and I can block most of them, but that's clap smash thing, forget it. I'm not dealing with that. So one of the reasons I felt that Cross Swords 1 was more polished than 2 is because each part of the game had its own little map that showed all of the places where you're going to fight enemies. You guys better just turn around and head back if you know what's good for you. You have a better survival chance telling Nazis that you decide to run away. That's all I'm trying to say here. Well, I guess another way to change the gameplay would be if gaining levels didn't directly increase your attack power, so there was more emphasis on buying weapons. Like, you wouldn't be able to skip directly to the most powerful one and save money that way. And just change attack power so that when you have the best or next best weapon, your total power will be the same. Now, I find this encounter to be fairly interesting because I feel like there's some story behind these two that we never get to find out, which is fine by me. I like mysteries like that, and The unique music they get has kind of a different feel to it. Like, I don't know, there's something sad about what they're doing. Though, anime loves that sort of thing. I don't know. They did try to kill me repeatedly, and they seem to have no problem with all of the usual slaughtering of innocents that happen in Cross Swords, so I'm not gonna feel too bad about it. So these guys are why you never have to buy magic. Well, maybe that's because I've been too stingy about using magic. Whatever. My normal attacks work just fine. And by that I mean non-magic. You know what I... Blah, blah, blah. I do like what they did with the background, how the tower just sort of looms up as you advance. Which kind of makes sense because the road is curved, actually. I like that design a lot. Oh, hello again. At first I just tried to do a power attack whenever they jumped in, whether it was telegraphed by fire or not. But since those guys attack quickly, I'd sometimes not start my power attack in time and eat counter damage. Yeah, that's right, if you get hit while you're dashing or starting up one of your moves, you will take extra damage, and as far as I can tell, this does not apply to enemies. It's a way that the game tries to enforce it tries to enforce the pace of you defend yourself and then you attack. Which I can kind of understand, because if you can just hit first and not worry about it, the game loses a lot. But I think there's ways to do counterattacks right. Punch-Out certainly did it right, and I think, yeah, that was definitely an older game. Also, Shadow Knights are my favorite enemy in the entire game. Like, most of my tricks don't work, you have to fight them fair, but that's okay because fighting them fair is a reasonable thing to do. You can get into volleys where you block, then they block, and also I don't know why I try to attack when it's spitting fire, because that's an awful idea. Maybe it's just reflex from my times fighting the skeleton worm. I don't know. Also, I like their death animation, and not just because I'm this horrible thing that likes murder. Well, that might be part of it, but... those portraits in the back are enemies from Cross Swords 1. I love that touch. Like, that's probably a fair amount of work, creating this whole corridor with all the different monsters in it. I appreciate it. I just wish I had more time to look at it while I was fighting all this stuff, but regardless. That goat monster, I'm just gonna say I'm glad it doesn't come back, because it's always a huge pain to deal with. Oh yeah, you're also going to see a frog monster in the next corridor, and I kind of like what they did, which is, in Cross Swords 1 it was this kind of agile thing that liked to attack from the back and only did jump attacks in melee. Ouch. But in this one they made it a lot more beefy, like we're fighting maybe a different clan of them or something. Okay, here's where the gauntlet really begins, because there's no more life drops to speak of. I mean, the turtle drops 1 bar's worth, big deal. So if you get hit by Shell Smash, you're gonna have a tough time with the rest of the game. So that night, enemy in the back, I think that's what led my brother to call this game Mike Tyson's Dark Souls, which is, I love that comparison even though people compare games to Dark Souls too much. Because, I mean, look at it, you're fighting all kinds of weird magic and knights and, well, okay, that's about it, I gotta admit. Oh yeah, the game is tough. Of course it's tough, it's an arcade game. So this is just in case you used any spells before the final boss. Do not use spells here. You'll regret it, I promise. What I really should have done was use a spirit shot on the mages anytime I knock them back, because it doesn't cost much life and it greatly decreases the chance of me getting hit by something, which is always a lot worse. Although there are some times where, I don't know, the enemy jumps forward in a weird way that you didn't quite expect, so you only have time for a normal attack. Definitely better than nothing. Oh yeah, don't use a spirit shot on anything with Omni Guard unless it's stunned by a knockback or something, because they'll just block it in the back row. There are a few enemies that will recover fast enough even from a knockback that they can block the spirit shot, but the Scarlet Mage is not one of them. And I did that knockback just to prove to myself that I wouldn't always mess up the command. So, I expected the first fight with Naziz to be, well, Neo Geo arcade shenanigans, but it's actually not bad. He only has high-low guard, and his attacks are pretty reasonable to block. What I do is just, I try to hold down because 2 of his 3 attacks are low, and if you have better reflexes than I do, which is not difficult, it's pretty easy to see when he raises his sword over his head for a high attack. So despite looking all fancy, he's actually not very good at melee fighting. He just has very heavy armor. That's pretty okay by me. Now, if you play Cross Swords 1 to the end, you don't actually have to be nearly as afraid of this guy as you were in the first game, because he doesn't have that artillery attack. All he has is that low attack. And as far as I can tell, its main purpose is to chip you into low health for the final part of the battle. Well, that, and if you're not careful about your counterattacks, you can still die, because its super armor lasts even during its recovery, and if you're not lucky, it can do an attack right afterwards. So what happens is you'll hit super armor twice and then just get smacked full on by the melee attack, and oh wow, I didn't even have time to explain Devilish Naziz. Magic too strong. So I'll explain what happened there and why. Devilish Naziz takes next to no damage from physical attacks at all. And that's when you're the warrior. Just forget it with the other 2 classes. Furthermore, he has a quick, high-low, unblockable Fire Breath attack, which you saw, and a very fast super armored melee attack, which can hit high and low. In addition to being fast, I just cannot tell whether it's coming high or low. I just don't bother, because tangling with it physically is pointless anyway. So I just use magic to kill it, and that... I find it hilarious that the final shop gives you an I lose button, because the level 8 sword or whatever weapon is right there, and if you buy it, you lose the game. In fact, I think that Devilish Nuz's really awful magic resistance is also a developer oversight, because I cannot imagine that you're supposed to be able to beat it that quickly. And this is where Nuz says, "Ha ha ha! I'm actually still great, and you're still losers. I'm just gonna leave in this glorious blaze of light, and the credits are gonna focus on me. Mwahaha." And he says he's gonna be back. Except there's no more Cross Swords games after this one, so he actually doesn't ever come back. Excuse me. I have two hypotheses for this. First is that after losing his entire army and getting beaten up horribly twice, he just has nothing when he goes back to the realm of eternal chaos or whatever. He just gets stabbed in an alleyway or something and you never see him again. The other hypothesis I have is that this is the prequel. And because in Cross Swords 1, you actually go into hell or whatever it is, and it looks like you crush him for good. So I would not be surprised if that was the order of things. In fact, I kind of like that idea. Even though the game says war returns to Belkana right at the start of the game, so it's kind of saying that this is the sequel. Whatever. I'm going to go with my own headcanon for this. Although, I admit that Nuz is just living the rest of his short life in the streets after this is also hilarious. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video and letting me ramble on about this. I had a lot of enjoyment, a lot of fun, I'm sorry. Recording nerves getting the better of me again. I had a lot of fun practicing this and playing it, even though there's a whole lot of broken stuff in this game. I love the detail put into the graphics. I love a lot of the tricks they give you. I think is pretty creative. And that's the end. And I forgot to put in my initials at the end, and I will always hate myself for that. Later, everyone.